And here we are, is a podcast for professionals, believers, and genuine people looking for genuine conversation. My name is Kia Harris Saklen, and I'm your host. I'll be sharing information about nonprofits, faith, business, entrepreneurship, life, and much more. I'm so excited for you to be joining me, and here we are.
We've all made mistakes and will continue to do so. But how do we move forward from these mistakes? I selected this topic because I just think a lot of what's going on in the atmosphere in society is that you need to criticize yourself, that you need to always be in your headspace and examining all your flaws. So I want you to do the opposite. I want you to examine, to reflect, but not examine to self-criticize to the point of harshness, to the point of you getting into a place of depression or anxiety or frustration because you have put yourself in that situation. And I want to say that lightly because we have to realize that our actions create the point of our lives. Our actions create the direction of our lives. So if we decide to have a mindset of, I can't do this, I'm not capable, why do I always do this? That mindset is going to fuel a lot of what happens in your life. Your thoughts attract your life circumstances. Your actions establish your life circumstances. So if we continue to reflect as we always do, because this is a habit that I always express and recommend for leaders, then you will not be in a place of not realizing your value and not valuing yourself as you should. So when it comes to making mistakes, we have to realize that the mistake was made and take ownership. And I would underline ownership. Do you take ownership of your mistakes? Or does your pride get in the way and say, I don't need to apologize, I was right, I don't care what they felt? So take ownership of your mistakes because you will make them, no matter if you're seasoned or if you are a young professional or you are a teen. You are going to make mistakes and it's okay to make mistakes. But the question becomes, what do you do when you make those mistakes? So after you realize the mistake and take ownership of it, you want to determine how to move forward. So if you put your pride aside and you know that you need to apologize, then apologize to that person. If you know that you need to change your habits, then change your habits. What about your behavior? Do you need to change your behavior? And then ask yourself, how can I do better? How can I do better so that this mistake does not happen again? So that my team is functioning as it should be, so that I'm known as a leader that communicates and is honest and transparent, which creates trust. Your leadership is going to lie on your ability to take ownership of your mistakes and determine how to move forward. Your team will trust you even further when it comes to this because you are taking ownership of your mistakes. Perhaps you've worked in an environment and you've had a leader and often they make mistakes, but they never take ownership. How does that make you feel? It may make you feel that you cannot trust this person, that this person has a certain attitude that you don't agree with. So I just want you to realize that apologizing, taking ownership of your mistakes is not a flaw. It is not weakness. In fact, it makes you stronger. In fact, it sets you apart from other leaders. It sets you apart. So what we don't do is allow ourselves to get dragged down after this process of going through, realizing the mistake, and then determining how to move forward. We don't allow ourselves to be dragged down in the process. So you don't make it so that you're constantly dwelling on what happened and beating yourself up about it. Well, I shouldn't have said that. And while I was in front of the whole team, and what are they going to think now? How am I going to move forward from this? Take some time independently and determine the pathway to resolution. So it may be that you internally reflect and you say, why did I do that specifically? Why did I say that? What can I have done differently? Was this a situation that I actually needed to comment on? Or would it have been okay if I just stood silent? Or should I have taken more time to make the decision? Should it have been I stepped away, took some time to reflect, and then decided to hire that person? So you make that intention to reflect before your mind tries to go into those spaces of regret and frustration, all those negative feelings. You are going to take some time to independently think about the situation, but not dwell on it. So we must also forgive ourselves and move on. When is the last time you made a mistake that no one was aware of but you? Did you forgive yourself for those situations as well? So we've been chatting about forgiving yourself when certain things happen in relation to other people. But there's also the situations that happen when we make mistakes independently. No one else is watching, but we still need to forgive ourselves. So forgiving ourselves should be one of our top priorities, especially as leaders. We are not going for perfection. We're going for transparency, honesty, and communication and compassion as a leader. So that means we have to forgive ourselves. How do we forgive ourselves? For some, if you're a writer, you may write a letter to yourself and say, I forgive you for, and you list out the things that you forgive yourself for. And it may be the next step to ball up that piece of paper and throw it in trash after you have made the forgiveness. And the symbolization of you throwing it in the trash can also mean that now I'm not going to go back and think about what I did in the past because I've moved on. I've moved on. I've resolved it. I've apologized. I've done the steps that I needed to. And now me throwing this in the trash shows that I'm moving on from the situation. So making sure that the process is not elongated where you're spending months, half of the year, even weeks. Sometimes I feel even days can be too long to dwell on a mistake. Dwelling on mistakes puts you in a place of incapacity. And what I mean by this is because your mind is so consumed by this single or variety of mistakes that now it is blocking or it is interfering with the other areas your mind needs to have the capacity to do. So it may be that you constantly are working through this mistake, thinking of this mistake that you had a month ago when your team is ready for you to direct them and give them exactly what they want or need in order to fulfill their role. Or it may be not even with your team or your business or organization. It may be that you are a leader among leaders within your friends. And so you dwelling on that mistake that you made and hindering you from establishing that relationship with that individual, that growth ability in that mistake that's in disguise. But if you take notice of it, it becomes an opportunity to grow. So although the process of forgiving yourself can take time, I encourage you to not let it take too much time. I was reading a book, I can't remember who said it, but it was basically saying 20 minutes or more is far more time, or they're saying 20 minutes or more is too much time to be dwelling on something from the past. So they consider 20 minutes have passed. That means that this instance, this circumstance is now in your past, which means you should not be thinking about it anymore. If we adopt a mindset like this, how free can we be? How free will we be? if we just spend as less of time dwelling on something, resolving it, and moving on. Now, some circumstances take a bit longer because you need to determine the best time to reach out to that person. But it's not that you're constantly dwelling on that mistake and hindering your own well-being and tearing yourself down. It may be that you work through the process of forgiveness, and now the next step is to talk to that person, but you're not dwelling on the same issue in that process before you talk to that person. So it's a whole mindset shift that needs to happen in order for you to have that forgiveness that's coming forth for yourself. So process of forgiveness can take time, but do not let it overwhelm its day. Do not let it overwhelm its stay. And if we do not go through that process mentioned before, so realizing the mistake, determining how to move forward, and then allowing ourselves to get in that mental space to not be in a place of a dark cloud, then your mind will have more ammo in order to keep you unburdened. So if we are continuously thinking about, well, this happened and I don't know if I can continue doing this and I give up, then that burdens you. Do you realize that? You are essentially burdening yourself because you're allowing your mind to continue to dwell on that issue. We've taken ownership and we said that we have made a mistake. We've apologized if that is the step. We've addressed it publicly. We've addressed it privately. But don't let it burden you for weeks, months, years at a time, because you need grace yourself. You need to extend grace to yourself. And if your mind continuously has mistake number 1, mistake number 20, all in your mental capacity, and you're continuing to dwell on these things, you can imagine how your mind has so much ammo to now bring you down even further, because mistake number 1 through 20 was not resolved, where you did not move on from them. And now there's more ammo for your mind to attack itself. You know that we have authority over our minds. We should have authority over our minds. When thoughts come to us, we should be able to cancel the thought. We should be able to say, I don't believe that. I don't accept that. I reject that. That's okay. I made the mistake, but I'm moving on. I made that mistake and I moved on already. So the ammo is created when you didn't forgive yourself for the past mistake, and then the one before that, and now you have this buildup. So this buildup of ammo, and this can mean regret, bitterness, anger, self-hate, insecurity, and more. So don't let your own mind have ammo against itself. Your mind should be working for you. Your mind should have downloads that are free and clear for them to be received in order to do the things that you're called to do. So downloads, I mean that you are having revelation about what it is you're supposed to do, revelation about what you've been called to do, which can be connected to the source. So I want you to make sure that you are taking control of your mind, not letting your mind take control of you. So when you also have this unforgiveness of yourself, it will impact the people around you. So not just professionally, but your loved ones, your team, your relationships. So you don't want it to impact your relationships because you need people. We all need people. We need these relationships. In fact, we need the sound and the important and the relationships that are complementary to ours, the healthy relationships that are complementary to us as people. We need these relationships. So don't let it impact the relationships that you have to the point where they come to a halt because you weren't able to take the step and apologize, or you weren't able to communicate what was going on, or you weren't able to simply say, I need some time to think about this. Let me get back to you. There's so many things that can hinder relationships, but there's so many other things that can maintain and sustain the relationship. So you want to be able to do that, leader. You want to be able to do that. So I encourage you today to say this with me. I forgive myself. I forgive myself. Even if they try to reconcile with someone, if you try to reconcile with someone and they reject you, I forgive myself. Even when your mind is trying to take you right back to that situation that happened last week or the month before, I forgive myself. Even when you're in the midst of a conversation with someone who wants to bring up your past, you don't have to say it to them verbally, but you can say in your mind, I forgive myself. And you can make it past tense. I have already forgiven myself. You can add sentences onto it. I've already forgiven myself, so I'm no longer going to dwell on this. Say it until you believe it. Say it until your mind gets in order to believe it. Say it until your mind is checked so you believe it. So I want you in this season to fight and win. And the way in which you can fight and win is fight and win against the negative thoughts that come against and try to come against your mind. So fight and win, but do not fight yourself. Fight and win and do not fight yourself. So I trust this episode has been a blessing for you, for taking ownership, evolving as a leader, being honest and transparent, and being compassionate towards others and yourself. I invite you to leave a review for this podcast. Do take a look at all the other episodes we have. You'll notice that they have categories for different series, for different topics. And then I also invite you to follow me on Instagram, and you will be able to see different ways in which you can connect with me, but also ways in which you can continue to evolve as a leader.